9 years ago, people were frantically here at the Journey, gutting the place, painting, putting up new walls, getting it all ready for their grand opening in November of 2013. A lot had happened leading up to that day. A lot had happened in the previous couple of years in the community as they got ready to open up this center for the Ardglen-Orenda communities. The Journey story actually started 12 years ago when Ted Brown, who is the executive director of Regeneration, which is an outreach to the homeless in Brampton, and Jamie Holtum, who is the pastor of North Bramalea United Church, went on I guess you could call it a tour of the more challenged communities in Brampton. Ted took Jamie around to different areas of the city where there are a lot of problems and issues. And when they came here to Ardglen, something really spoke to Jamie's heart. His children had been born at Peel Memorial, which is right in the middle of the neighborhood. He'd played basketball here, and he had no idea of the challenges that were going on in this neighborhood. And he knew that they had to do something. So they partnered with the school and started offering reading programs for the children. They would do clothing distribution. They would take people back to the church for a meal on Sunday evenings. A whole variety of programs rose up, and then a couple of very critical issues took place that changed it all, from coming and visiting the neighborhood to knowing that they had to be in the neighborhood. The second crucial moment happened in January of 2013. It was late in the evening. A young boy named Keyshawn Williams was here in this unit playing a video game. There was no fence there at the time. Someone came up to the back window. They'd only lived here for 4 days and shot and killed him. Keyshawn was just a child. He was obviously not the target of the killing, but nonetheless, he's the one that died. And all kinds of things happened at that moment. Obviously, a lot of trauma in the community. And because at that time, North Bramalea had already been working in the community, they were asked to hold a memorial service. So they blocked off the street here and held a service for Keyshawn to remember him. I wish I could say that the case was solved, but it never has been. Whoever killed him, it's never been resolved. They've never been found. And that was one of the key moments for the Journey. The Journey knew that it wasn't enough to be visiting here. They had to be present. When North Bramalea United Church started working in this community, one of the first things they did was partner with Sir Winston Churchill Public School, offering a reading program. Also, they joined the Parent-Teacher Council. One of those Parent-Teacher Council meetings became a very critical moment for the church. One of the parents said to the church leaders, you know, organizations come here all the time and they promise us this, they promise us that, they're going to do this for us, they're going to do this with us. They make all these promises, they get our hopes up, and then they disappear. You know, it would be better if you weren't here at all than if you're going to make all kinds of promises and just leave. That became a very critical moment for North Bramalea United Church because they realized if they were going to commit to the community, they had to commit for the long term and they needed to be present in the community. So why Ardglen and Orenda? I mean, there's lots of challenged neighborhoods. And I should start off by saying that the reputation that Ardglen and Orenda have is far worse than what the community is really like. There are a lot of great people in this community who are just trying their best to do their best. But there are people in this community who maybe aren't so great and maybe aren't helping things very much. We're on the infamous Truman Street Bridge right now. I can remember about 5-6 years ago, a police officer coming to me and saying, you know that you have girls as young as 13 who are offering discounted services to men in the community on this bridge. I had no idea. And I talked to people in the community, and they didn't realize that girls as young as 13 were being sex trafficked out of our neighborhood. They finally found the pimp, and then a year later, almost to the day, that same police officer came to me and said, it's still going on. And so we formed the Journey Human Trafficking Committee. So I co-chair this committee with the Peel Regional Police, and we seek to address the issues that not only this community faces, but all through the region of Peel. So many young women are being trafficked. That isn't the only reason why we're in this community. I talked about Sir Winston Churchill Public School. It unfortunately ranks in the bottom 10% in the EQAO tests in all of the province of Ontario. Bottom 10% in the entire province. And it isn't because the teachers don't care. It isn't because the parents don't care. It isn't because the children aren't trying. It's just that there is so much piled up against the children in this community that they struggle to learn. Not all their parents have a lot of education. Many of them are families with English as a second language. Many of the children struggle and suffer, and as a result, they need help. They need people to help them deal with their education. One of the misunderstandings that people have about the community is that they think that we're dealing with housing here, with public housing, and that's not the case. Ard Glen, which is over here to my left, is a series of townhomes. They're low rental because, quite frankly, they're in horrendous shape and have been very poorly managed. And the neighbors there could tell you just horror stories of how bad conditions can be. And behind me here is Orenda Court, which is an apartment building. You can see the building up there, and also there's townhomes around it. And they're both privately owned buildings, but they're very low rent because, quite frankly, somebody has to offer low rent for people. And so when we started working in Ard Glen, but we always thought of Orenda Court as part of our catchment. But this bridge is a barrier and people will not cross it. So about 6 years ago, we said, you know what? If we can't get the Orenda people to come to us, we will go to Orenda. And so we've been renting an apartment in the apartment tower and offering programming for the people who live in Orenda Court. We offer after-school programming for the children. We offer women's programming. We have various events. Whatever it is that needs to be done in order to serve this community. It's not unusual to see pairs of running shoes hanging around the Truman Street Bridge, and if you're aware, you know that that's a symbol used to say, hey, you can buy drugs here. And that's often what happens here on the Truman Street Bridge. It's not unusual. I'll sometimes come up here just to hang around and look around over the community, and there'll be some interesting looking individuals here who after a while will realize I'm not going away, and so they do. Another problem in the community is drug use. There's a lot of people who struggle with addiction, and not just drugs, also alcohol addiction. There's a lot of people who struggle with mental illness in this community. They struggle because they have precarious employment, they have problems with food security. Not all of them have the education they'd like. Many of them are new immigrants to the country and are struggling to adapt to a new culture, a new language, a new circumstances and that. So there's an awful lot that goes on in this community that we are here as the Journey Neighborhood Center to address. So I said earlier that Orenda wouldn't come to Ard Glen, so we came to Orenda. And I knew a little bit about the community, and I knew that there were challenges here. We had an opportunity for an early years program to be run here, and I thought, well, I should maybe explain to the person who approached us about it what Orenda is really like. And I started to tell her, and she stopped me and said, no, it's all right. We had an early years program nearby, and the SWAT team would come and prep in our parking lot before they came and raided Orenda. So I thought, okay, they understand that there are challenges in this community, and there continue to be challenges here. There was a young man murdered here just a couple years ago in the parking lot late Saturday night, and that so this community does have its issues. But as I said earlier, the reputation for the Ard Glen Orenda communities is far worse than the reality. There are great people who live here, wonderful people who work hard, who do the best they can. And we are just literally right outside our room. It's just right here in this building. And we've been renting it the last couple of years during COVID, even though we haven't been able to use it for programming. Hi, how are you? I can't complain too much. You know, it's a gorgeous day today. And this time of year, we have to celebrate every good day because you just don't know when the next one will be. So we're excited to be able to do some programming again here at the Journey Orenda Court, just right here in this building. It's exciting for us. The management of this place has been wonderful to us. They give us a wonderful discount on the rent. Plus, they've donated money to the past, and they're very supportive of everything that we do here at Orenda Court. Behind me is number 59 Ard Glen. Now, when you look at this building and you look at the other townhomes along here, you see a marked difference. That's because this building is new. 8 years ago, on a Sunday morning at 4 a.m., this building burnt down. 18 units were destroyed. More than 20 families lost their home because a number of the basements were being rented out illegally. And a little boy, Nicholas, died in the fire. It was one of many tragedies in this community. Keyshawn Williams being shot, Nicholas dying in a fire, a little boy was struck by lightning and killed in the local park. There's been a lot of tragedy in the community and a lot of challenges. At the time, because the Journey is just there, we became the gathering point. The day of the fire, we had the news media there, we had food trucks there, we were handing out clothing, the fire department, you name them, they were in our parking lot. And that continued on for weeks and months afterwards. We set up a trust fund. I was one of the trustees distributing funds to the families during this time of loss. It was just one of the many ways that the Journey has tried to help out this community and make a difference for the people that are here. 3 years ago, there was a mass eviction of 3 of the buildings along the street, 62 units altogether. And that mass eviction was actually tied into the fire at 59. You see, the previous owners of these buildings had erected illegal peaked roofs over 4 of the buildings. When the fire broke out in 59, it broke out up through the one roof and underneath the peaked roof, destroying the whole building. It was a fire hazard, it was dangerous. So the fire department ordered that the roofs be removed from these buildings, which meant that the residents of 62 different units were evicted by the landlord. In fact, that meeting took place at the Journey Neighborhood Center when they told the people that they were being evicted. Well, we sprung into action. We contacted the Region Appeals Housing and we asked them to come. And in fact, they came week after week after week, working with individual residents, finding them housing. And it was a challenge because many of the people in these buildings have poor ratings. They have not necessarily been good tenants. Many of them were behind in their rent. And it was a struggle to place them. But in the end, every single family got a place to live. So let's get real here. It costs money to run the Journey Centers. It costs money for the programming. It costs money for rent and hydro. It costs money for staffing the Journey. And we've been very blessed. There have been so many organizations that have helped us out over the years. United Way, the Region Appeal, the City of Brampton, Ontario Trillium Foundation. We've had many service clubs like Kiwanis and Lions and Rotary and Zonta support us as well. And we've had many individual donors help us. And we want to reach out to you and we want to ask you to think about the Journey, think about the community that we serve, think about the children whose lives we're investing in. And we'd ask you to consider financially supporting the Journey Neighborhood Center. We'd also ask you to consider volunteering as well. We could always use volunteers for our programs. Somewhere on the screen here will be information about Canada Helps. That's one way that you can donate money to the Journey. You also can drop by at 9 Ard Glen Drive and bring a check or bring your wallet. We'll take cash as well. but we would ask you to consider supporting the work that we're doing for this neighborhood. Thank you.